I'm not crying, you're crying. Welcome to Patscast. I'm Brad Whitaker. Today is the end of an era in New England. New England Patriots and head coach slash GM Bill Belichick will part ways after 24 seasons together. The news broke early this morning, mutually by ESPN's Adam Schefter and ESPN Boston's Mike Reese. You can read the story on ESPN.com. Apparently, Kraft and Belichick met throughout the week. There supposedly, according to the story, was no conflict. They both took the high road, presented their plans for the future, and ultimately agreed to part ways. Whether that's how it actually played out, I'm not sure we'll ever actually know, but I'm sure it was very important, at least to Robert Kraft, that's the way it was phrased, right? That Belichick wasn't fired, that it was a mutual agreement to part ways, because all that Belichick has done for the Patriots organization, the greatest run, not only in NFL history, but perhaps professional sports in general, particularly when you factor in the salary cap and the fact that every year in the NFL with the draft and the way it's set up is a great equalizer, and the Patriots just continued to win until about 4 years ago with the departure of Tom Brady. And it's sad to see. Obviously, Belichick, this is hopefully will be seen as a celebration. Hopefully he comes back, whether his coaching career ends in 3 or 4 years or in the more immediate future. Comes back and gets that red jacket and has a nice ceremony for the fans to honor him. We all hope to see that very soon. Really great run, obviously. Really, the way I look at it with Belichick is there were 3 eras in that 24-year period. 4 if you count the last 4 years, but we won't talk about that much. We'll kind of ignore it a little bit. But, obviously he kind of stumbled out of the gate a little bit his first year with New England. He was with the New York Jets for about 5 minutes. Really was with the Patriots for a brief period of time with Bill Parcells, but did most of his work with Parcells as a defensive coordinator with the New York Giants. And that really was the tone he set in New England right off the bat, was rebuilding that defense so they could be a championship contender right away. And it took the drafting of a little game manager named Tom Brady to really bring it all together. Obviously, the defense was the main theme of those early Super Bowl years. Certainly the first, I would say, maybe the first 2. Drew Bledsoe went down, obviously, against New York Jets in Week 2 in Belichick's second year there. Brady took over, and the rest was history. And we saw a really defensive-heavy team dominate as Brady kind of came into his own with those first 3 Super Bowls, and really the offense began to start to dominate a little bit more in the end of that era, but really took that great defense he put together and then a game manager like Brady who could run the offense, not make a lot of mistakes, and take what the defenses gave him. And then Brady, we all know what he eventually became at quarterback. The second era was interesting because it was the most explosive era in terms of offensive production. Obviously, they brought in Randy Moss, but the Patriots didn't win any Super Bowls during that era, but they continued to dominate in terms of making deep playoff runs, lots of AFC Championship game appearances, obviously lost a couple Super Bowls to the New York Giants. The first one heartbreaking, going in 18-0 and not being able to finishing the season 18-1. But really, that was kind of the most explosive era of the Tom Brady days with Randy Moss and Wes Welker out there. And that led into a really interesting era of balance on both sides of the football, bringing in Rob Gronkowski and Julian Edelman, and really hitting the jackpot on those picks because those were big question marks. Edelman was a quarterback at Kent State. Gronk had a horrible injury history at Arizona, and he rebuilt that defense, rebuilt that offensive line, which was exposed a little bit during those giant Super Bowls. And we saw the Patriots go on what, in my opinion, was an even more impressive run because they were, at the very least, in the AFC Championship game every year from, 2012 or 2013 until the last Super Bowl against the LA Rams. And, we we could have won more titles, too. I mean, that's the crazy thing. They lost the Super Bowl to the Eagles. They had 2 very close games on the road against the Denver Broncos while Peyton Manning was there. And, you had the Malcolm Butler game in Arizona against the Seattle Seahawks. The greatest comeback in Super Bowl history against the Atlanta Falcons. And then, really, I think to cap it off, the most impressive achievement was the last Super Bowl, because that roster was not what the previous rosters were. They really honestly had no business being in that Super Bowl. We saw the rise of the Kansas City Chiefs. They lost 5 games that season to non-playoff teams, and they kind of changed the offense a little bit to a run-first, run-heavy, more conservative offense heading into the postseason. And it worked out. And, probably my favorite game as a Patriots fan, even more than the Tuck Rule game in 2002, even more than the Malcolm Butler interception game, even more than the Super Bowl comeback against the Falcons, was that final AFC Championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes won the MVP that year. Chiefs just look so dominant. We know the run that they went on, that they're perhaps continuing at this point. And Brady went into Arrowhead and with Belichick and put in a really great scheme to stop Mahomes. It really only lasted the first half because Andy Reid figured things out, but Brady made enough plays there in the second half, and certainly they won the coin flip in overtime. Going into Arrowhead, especially after losing there on Monday Night Football a few years before in that loud environment, and winning that game really capped things off for me in really the greatest era in professional sports history. Really incredible to see Bill Belichick just sustain that success for 20 plus years. Obviously, we know how it ended. Tom Brady left after 2019, didn't have a lot of weapons, and decided to go to Tampa, won a Super Bowl down there. Still impressive that the Patriots managed to win, I think it was 8 games when they brought in Cam Newton, a quarterback that couldn't be more opposite than Tom Brady, and they schemed it up well enough to win, to basically be a 500 football team. And I'm a big believer, had Cam Newton not gone down with COVID early in the season, that was that weird 2020 year, they may have been a playoff team. And things looked to be moving in the right direction when they drafted Mac Jones. He was second in line for Rookie of the Year. Patriots, about 2/3 of the way through that season, had the best record in the AFC at one point. But eventually they got exposed going up against some of the more modern, high-powered offenses, certainly against Josh Allen in the postseason with the Buffalo Bills. And, they just have not matched the Bills and the Chiefs and the Bengals and some of these really deep, fast, dynamic offenses that the Patriots really have not been. And it all kind of started to fall downhill a little bit with promoting Matt Patricia as the de facto offensive coordinator this past season. And then we thought things would get a little bit better with Bill O'Brien being brought in this season. It obviously didn't work out. Patriots finished with just 4 wins and now have a high draft pick, and they agreed to part ways. So it's going to be interesting going forward to see what happens. Bill Belichick obviously still wants to coach. This story mentions by Mike Reese and Adam Schefter that, certainly there's going to be interest drawn for Belichick with some of these head coaching vacancies. And the Atlanta Falcons are the first team that is mentioned there. And I do find it very interesting that the Falcons have not requested any interviews yet. Maybe that'll change today. I don't know. But a lot of this seems like it was planned. And we'll see if ultimately they part ways and come up to a buyout, or if the Patriots are able to get draft compensation. That would be the best case scenario, especially if somehow they can get a first-round pick from the Atlanta Falcons or another team. Falcons have the number 8 overall pick. That'd be pretty cool to have them the number 3 and the number 8 pick in the 2024 NFL Draft. You can get compensation for Belichick. I know a lot of people don't think you can. The Denver Broncos spent a first and a second round pick to get Sean Payton, who wasn't going to return as the Saints head coach. So perhaps the Patriots can work out a deal with the Falcons. We know Robert Kraft and Arthur Blank have a great relationship. Blank thinks very highly of Belichick. That seems like an obvious fit, but there are other teams, the Chargers, potentially the Cowboys if they get knocked out early. I don't see the Commanders happening anymore, but it's possible. The Panthers, maybe the Titans and the Raiders, probably less likely. But Belichick is not done. It's a shame we didn't get to see him break Don Shula's record, but I'll certainly be rooting for him to do it wherever he goes, as long as they are not playing the New England Patriots. So the head coaching search starts now for the Patriots. The betting favorite, according to the Tommy Kerns of the world, are still Jerod Mayo. They still think Jerod Mayo might be the head coach. Robert Kraft expressed that he is basically the heir apparent to Belichick last year. I think that equation changes a little bit with Mike Vrabel being available on the market, but the Patriots should take many interviews. They should. They obviously will interview Jerod Mayo, and he has a real shot at the job. They will interview Mike Vrabel. Perhaps they even consider Josh McDaniels. My hope is McDaniels comes back as the offensive coordinator, but maybe he'll follow Belichick wherever he goes, and they stick with Bill O'Brien, which is not the end of the world, in my opinion. I've expressed on this podcast that, I would love to see them look into more offensive-minded modern coaches. Eric Bieniemy, who was with the Kansas City Chiefs for 4 years, is with the Commanders now as the offensive coordinator. There's also Ben Johnson in Detroit. I hope they take a lot of interviews and get an outside perspective. At the very least, if they want to go with Mayo or Vrabel, it will provide them clarity on their decision. Robert Kraft certainly has a big decision there to make. Along with the general manager role, I would expect the Patriots to separate those two roles now that Bill Belichick is gone. My favorite is Adam Peters over with San Francisco, who works under John Lynch. Certainly understands how modern teams manipulate the salary cap, has done a good job with Lynch in San Francisco, and has some experience working in Foxborough as well. I think he would be the favorite. I really hope he gets an interview. But will be very interesting going forward. I would expect the Patriots sometime today to issue a statement. Wouldn't expect any big news coming out of that statement. It will honor Belichick. It will say they mutually parted ways. And if there's any dirty laundry there, that will come out and leak in the next couple of weeks. I hope that isn't the case. According to the story from Mike Reese and Adam Schefter, that was not the case, and Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft ended things amicably. Very interesting couple of days, right? You saw the news with Nick Saban yesterday, retiring as Alabama's head coach. Pete Carroll, former Patriots coach, is moving up into the front office as in an advisory role for the Seattle Seahawks. And now we get the news of Bill Belichick breaking less than 24 hours later. Really, football being flipped on its head right now. It's a sad time, but I hope we use this as a point to remember all that Bill Belichick did for the New England Patriots and honor him in the short to medium term with a red jacket and an appropriate ceremony when the time comes. I didn't know what to talk about this morning. It's really funny. I woke up and I'm like, is it too early for a mock draft? Well, then this news broke, and obviously this is going to be the big story going forward. We'll be here at Pat's Cast to cover it. If anything else breaks regarding the head coach search, the GM search, and if the Patriots are going to trade Belichick, or if Belichick's going to go to another team, if he's essentially a free agent, we'll see what happens. It's also possible Belichick just wants to take a year off, see how the lay of the league plays out, and goes into broadcasting on Fox or CBS or ESPN or somewhere. And I know it sounds weird because Belichick is grumpy and mumbles all the time, but when he wants to, he can be very charismatic. And I think he would do an excellent job on television if that's something he wants to do. But I'd say right now, my prediction would be Arthur Blank ideally makes a trade for Bill Belichick. The Patriots get a little bit of draft compensation, and he goes to the Atlanta Falcons, where the situation is set up very nicely for him. I think the Patriots have a lot of hard conversations between Jerod Mayo and Mike Vrabel to determine who the next head coach is. I think it will be Vrabel, even if many still believe it's Mayo. Hopefully Mayo sticks around as the defensive coordinator, but he'll likely get interviews elsewhere if he does not become the Patriots head coach. They do have options. I really like DeMarcus Covington as the replacement of defensive coordinator if Jerod Mayo does go somewhere else. And if it is Mike Vrabel, he's got options, whether it's Josh McDaniels, whether it's keeping Bill O'Brien. There's also Arthur Smith, who he did a very good job as the offensive coordinator in Tennessee with Vrabel, was recently fired by the Falcons. might be an excellent choice in New England if Vrabel is the head coach. But we're all speculating at this point. A lot's going to play out, and it's probably not going to happen right away. I would expect that to develop a little bit more in the next couple of weeks. We'll be here at Pat's Cast to cover it.